Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Kwiatkowski. Alex Jantz over here. I apologize to the people in the front. I'm probably going to walk around here or walk around a little bit as we go through the presentation. Just quick housekeeping. We'll go through kind of who we are, who we work for. We'll talk about our methodology. I was just talking to somebody here that we use a lean startup methodology. We've used waterfall in the past, a little bit of agile. Curious what people think of lean startup methodology from a BI perspective. You know, I've seen it in app dev, but we're trying to incorporate it into what we're doing from a BI perspective. Aha moments. So as we deployed our application that we put out there, it always feels good when someone says, I used your app and it added value to what I did. So these are some of the aha moments that I'll go through from a use case perspective. Solutions, I'll turn that a lot over to when Alex talks. So we're probably about half of PowerPoint when we want to actually demonstrate the application. And so if the wireless is working and our app is working, hopefully everything will work out. And we compile the app and everything works out from a Xamarin perspective. And then questions, we'll try to get through. You can ask questions while we go, by the way. That's fine. And I think we timed out about 40 to 45 minutes as we get through. All right, so if you can hit the next slide. So my name is Jeff Kwiatkowski. Been in IT now about 20 years or so. Have spent the last 10 in business intelligence work. Just talking with someone over here. I worked for Jantz Controls. Was platform manager for the automotive group for EDW. Worked with Vince when I was there. So have dabbled in business objects with the Oracle backend. Some Cognos work. Have been a lot in ClickView. And then most recent, who has a Hadoop platform up and going? One, not many. Is people looking at it? Is it hot right now? I don't see any nods or anything. Yes, no. So I can talk brief. I was talking to the Hortonworks guys out there too. We're doing a little bit in Hadoop right now. I put up there, I've tried or attempted 3 startups. Who's heard of WhatsApp? Right there, 18 or 6, what was it, 18, 16 billion? 18 billion that Facebook, bought them out for. So I probably wouldn't be here if I was working for WhatsApp. And then this was, is anyone a Lions fan here? A big time Lions fan? Okay. What do you think that number means? 37%, any ideas?
Wins in the last.
If anybody saw my bio, right, I said I'm an avid Lions fan. So I am an avid Lions fan. So 37% is their 10-year win-loss record. But next year, right, new coach, they're going to the Super Bowl. I'm very optimistic, right? Are you going to bet me on that one?
If anybody wants to take advantage of that bet, I'll see you in the hallway. Yeah.
All right, with that, I'll turn it over to Alex.
I'm Alex Jantz, work for Open Systems Technologies, OST for short. Been there for the last 2 years. Been working on the JCI project primarily for that 2 years. Before that was in the aerospace field. Worked as a contractor for Boeing, Airbus, out of GE Aerospace in Grand Rapids. No startups to my name, but love to create the next WhatsApp.
And retired. Jantz Controls. It was funny. I didn't know Jantz Controls was that big when I interviewed there, but Jantz Controls has 120,000 employees worldwide, very large organization, broken out into about 3 or 4 different divisions. The one division is automotive. Actually, a big presence probably here in Detroit. I come from the Holland office, basically for Jantz Controls. Most recently, had some electronic stuff bought out by, I think, Jantz bought them out. So the second one is our battery division. Chances are, if you own a car, boat, RV, you have a Jantz Controls battery in that. And I said that to somebody at lunchtime. And Jantz Controls has 98% of the battery market. So we actually manufacture batteries and ship them out. And then we're big in, you can imagine, lithium ion. So a lot of different vehicles and electronic vehicles are out there. Then again, President Obama a few years ago came in ribbon cutting in Holland of the new lithium ion plant. Workplace solutions. That division does really a lot of different things. In this winter, they do a lot of vehicle or facility management. So a lot of plowing. Everything to do with a facility, they do facility management as well. And then lastly, the one that I work for is called building efficiency. So again, their claim to fame is this building, this room, has a lot of controls in it. So probably a thermostat, they have lights going on, it's pumping air through here. We have a system called Metasys. We have 38% of the market share within the world where we do building control systems. So we're constantly monitoring temperature, heat, lighting, all those other things in a system called Metasys. And we'll kind of talk through how we integrate with Metasys in those building control systems.
Open Systems Technologies, we're based out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. We have 214 employees globally. We've got an office, global headquarters, Grand Rapids, one in Ann Arbor, office in Detroit, and most recently opened one in London, UK. We've really grown substantially in the last few years, primarily from application development. We started out as a hardware reseller. We're an HP reseller about, I think it was 15 years ago. OST started, 5-man shop, and seen substantial growth. With that, they've kind of grown with their employees too. So they've opened a security practice for security auditing. We've got a managed services area. They install servers at your farm over the weekend if you don't want to do it. We've got a business process solutions. They'll do auditing for find some areas for getting process in place, and data center solutions.
And so OST has been great working with in terms of they've embraced kind of this lean or agile methodology. So, all right, another quiz for you. Probably tired of these already. Is anybody too hot? Oh, one person's too hot. Anybody too cold? Oh, one person's too. Anybody sleepy? Maybe later when I ask that question. So that's all good news. We didn't get a lot of hands. So what that basically means is the control system we have in place here, Metasys, that's monitoring the lights, the CO2, the air that's coming in here is doing its job. And so that's really our job basically in the system that we created as we monitor everything that's happening in this building, and in particular this room. We're making sure that someone is watching that information, lots and lots of information, and basically saying the building's not too hot, the building's not too cold, and someone's not sleeping. Or in that case, there's too much CO2 in the air. So we're not circulating the air fast enough. So you can imagine, as you go to the next slide for me, Alex. Jantz Controls is monitoring hundreds of thousands of buildings across the US, across North America. We're also monitoring these individual buildings. So what we need to do is, we had a lot of people raise their hand and say it's too hot or too cold or I'm too sleepy. It's our job to take that needle, right, that we're calling in there, and the haystack of all these buildings and all this data, and surface that up to our local branch over here to come and fix the problem. So what does this really mean? All this data basically flowing through here. So if you think about this, in this room alone, let's see, you've got a valve there, there, and there, right? We've got lights on, we even have some alarm controls. We have a temperature sensor. If you think about just this one room alone, it's sending data at every 1, 5, and 15-minute intervals up to a central repository, probably within this building. Then that's being sent off more or less to our system. So now multiply that by the number of buildings across North America that we have to monitor, and then basically at one point in time, send to a technician on his phone, saying in a Marriott, in this room, there's a problem. And that's what we're trying to solve. And that's some of what we coded around. Just go back one slide. So what we have in the slide deck here, we have some data that's happening in dynamic. So we're starting on the left. So like I just mentioned, this building's pumping sensor data through. There's equipment outside. There's equipment on the roof as well that's pumping data up there. Again, going to a central repository and going off. Now the other thing is we need to then align that data with other information. So how big is this building? How big is the room? What's the location of it? What's the threshold of the piece of equipment? What's it supposed to be in here? Is it supposed to be 68.5 or 72.6? So we need to take all that dynamic data that's pumping through, and then we align it with all the other information. Right? Do we have a service contract with this building and this vendor? Right? When's the last time we've been out there? So then we need to align it with all that information. And again, we need to pump it up to devices like this or on the dashboard, use ClickView to then mine that data. And that's what we'll take you kind of through as we go through the presentation. So how much data is it, Alex?
So to give you an idea of our biggest data producer, we have a chiller which will cool a a building, a large building. This hotel probably has 1 chiller, and that produces 20,000 rows a day. So you can imagine if we've got 500 of them, we've got 10 million rows a day. Now, we don't have just 500 chillers, we've got over 5,000 in North America, so that gives you an idea of the data volume that's coming in. On top of that, there's rooftop units. If you ever look out over like a flat roof, you'll probably see these little units sitting on top. They produce both warm and cold air. Those also produce a huge amount of data. So we're absorbing all that data as it flows in real time. So our data growth over the last year, 6 months, has been pretty substantial. You can see we took a big leap about January, February, from about 10 million rows a day to about 30 million, and we're on target for about 50 million rows a day coming into our data warehouse. So we want to take the data as it flows from sensor to platform as quickly as possible. This gives the ability for somebody in the field to do a diagnostic. It also gives us alerts if there's something going wrong in the middle of the night, and we have to triage that problem. So how do we take that data from the receiver all the way to your device so quickly? We've got a receiver which will send out data every 7 minutes. That's as fast as the receiver can send. From there, it's up to us to make that as quickly as possible. We've got a transactional database that all that data is flowing into. So raw data flows into our system. We write it as a raw value, and then we've got a process that runs every 15 minutes and checks the data out for consistency and also for manipulation into a reporting model. That gives us the ability to surface up to our different applications, either through StoreProc or raw reads, right off the reporting database.
No, he skipped the part that we're at about 22 minutes now, which is too slow, which is hard to believe. So at 10 million rows a day and growing, actually the branches and the technicians would like that as near real time as they can get it. And so we're working for, looking at different ways in which we can do that. So someone used this analogy on me about a month ago, so I stole it. But does anybody have a check engine light on in their car right now? No, no. Or how about a beeping smoke alarm because you need to change the battery, right? Drives me crazy. I let it go like a day or two if it's in my basement. And so what we realize a lot of times is, again, all this data is pumping through. How do we make it relevant? How do we make a technician care? And here's been one of the big challenges is that building automation control system I kind of mentioned, that thing is throwing alarms like crazy. I mean, they're getting all these alarms popping up all the time. They're like, oh, I don't care about that one. I don't think they care about maybe 99% of them. So here's what we did. We wrote what we call a rule engine, so to make sure they do check the engine light if something goes wrong. So to make this even a little bit more complicated, so you have these 10 million rows and growing every day flowing in here at every 22 minutes. What we wanted to do is write what we call a rule engine or an event engine. So for example, I used this earlier. This room maybe has a set point. So what's the temperature supposed to be? Let's say it's supposed to be at 70 degrees. Okay, good temperature. We put a variance in there. If it goes down to 69 or 71, that's fine too. But if that then goes to 71.5, boom, throw an event. And so at that point, it goes up to the person's phone. They get it. Oh yeah, Marriott in this room, I've got a problem. So that's one type of event in which we created. The other one was, especially in the pieces of equipment, we didn't want to do it immediately. We want to do it over time. So if that piece of equipment started to degrade and it hit a certain threshold, so as events come in, I'm counting them. If I reach a certain threshold or 50%, then at that point I throw an event. And so you'll see as we kind of go through the different applications, you see the different types of events. I'll give you an example where someone blew a breaker on an AC unit. That's more of an immediate event. I want to kind of get knowledge of that right away. I can take a look at it. Some of the other events we had basically trend over time. We see the piece of equipment degrading. We want to go check it out and send an alert based on that. So I'll jump into this one first. And then this has been one of the things, that's a real picture of one of the whiteboards. I mentioned this earlier. Right around, we've kind of gotten away from writing documentation. One of the reasons is, and I mentioned that where's Conrad, I don't know if he's still in the room. I mentioned this at lunch. I think IT is at a huge disadvantage now where we were 10 years ago, or even 15 years ago. 10 or 15 years ago, I didn't have to compete with an ESPN app on my phone, right? Or a website, right? Or Facebook, or anything else. Now, if I put an app out there, or I put a dashboard, they're like, well, that's not as good as, fantasy football. That's not as good as ESPN. I mean, so, the one thing is people expect changes and they expect them rapidly. And that's been a real frustration for me in that, years ago, we didn't have to hire designers to make sure our web apps looked okay. Now it's the first thing I do. Okay, what's the color palette supposed to be? What is it supposed to look like? And so, that's one of the reasons I work with OST, is I guess they've embraced my style maybe a little bit. Whiteboard, go do it, let's MVP it. So Allison kind of take you through what we've been doing.
So when I first came on the project, I had come out of aerospace, and waterfall methodology was really what we used, still is used. And it was kind of a good awakening, a rude awakening for me to walk into. This is probably a very good example of my first requirement stop. So I walk in on a Monday, Jeff says, all right, here's what we want build it, and go from there. So I tried to buckle down, read Lean Startup, Eric Rice, wrote 2011. And it's got some good estimates, very good case studies as to how you can take the Lean Startup methodology and implement it into a corporate situation. And that's really what we've kind of rallied behind. So the biggest thing for us is do releases and do them often. And when you do those releases, you want to get just the bare bones, so the minimum viable product. Those are our two biggest things. So when we kick off a new project, get a requirement, we want to get to building it just so we can see the functionalities there. And then as soon as we get the functionality, we want to show the user to make sure we didn't diverge from really what the expectation of what they want to build was. We don't want to build the Taj Mahal and they want the Pisa Tower. So we do it very iteratively. Luckily, we're all very close. Jeff bridges the gap between OST and corporate. He's actually our on-site JCI resident. He's at OST probably more than on-site at JCI. So once we do this whole iterative cycle, we build it. You want to measure the performance, whether it be user performance, actual technical performance, and see what kind of feedback you're getting. If it's good feedback, you're going to continue that path. If it's bad feedback, maybe you need a designer to be brought in. You're going to learn from the experience. And then the last big piece of that is just embracing the chaos that comes with development. There's unexpected things around every turn when we're building. It doesn't matter what you're building. You could be working on the house and you've got a bad foundation, or you could be working on a software project and you have some sort of legacy code that you didn't expect to have to refactor. Either way, you embrace it, you learn from it, and if you do it more iteratively, you can get around that very quickly.
Is anybody, how many people do waterfall, right? Are most people doing lean right now? No? Lean? Yeah, some lean, some agile? Okay. Yeah, agile, okay. Yeah, I think it's been a nice transition. I think early on people were doing a lot of waterfall, and there's been a lot of benefits to doing agile and or lean. And then this is something we found the quote 6 or 8 weeks ago. If you feel like you're in control, you're going too slow. I mentioned that in the office, and Alex, said this, Mario Andretti. So, I mean, a good example of this, I don't know if we'll get to this demo, but we had corporates say they want to look at our Google Analytics. So we track everything on the website through Google. Literally I don't even know if we whiteboarded that. I basically just said, go get the Google Analytics and throw it in the click view. I think we're on our 4th or 5th round.
Right.
In about 2 weeks. And so, again, our idea is iterate through very quickly, get in front of the customer, see what they like and don't like fairly quickly from the MVP perspective. Okay. So here are some of the aha moments. And we made, so this has been, this app is in production for about a year now. It's iterated through a couple different times. We've added technology onto it. This was our very first thing we did from a dashboard perspective. So this is kind of that aha moment. So we had a branch up in Ottawa, get a call from the guy, hey, my chiller seems to be failing, don't know what's going on. Okay, let me send somebody out there. And you got to understand JCI's business, right? When we have to roll a truck, and if he's under a service contract, we're losing money, right? So we don't want to roll a truck. We want to make sure people are basically looking at the dashboard and not spending whatever amount of money it is off in a truck, not servicing or getting more business. So this happened a couple different times. The technician was kind of pulling their hair out, and then again, oh, we can use the dashboard. And so what we did, did you bring an app up yet? Is we're bringing all this information and we created HTML5. It's a dashboard responsive design. And what this allows them to do is basically click into that location, build the charts and graphs that they want, and basically take a look at it. So what was happening at midnight, I don't know much about chillers, one of the valves was kind of getting stuck. He actually showed us on a graph that it flatlined for a period of time, reset itself, and then came back into spec. But basically by using the dashboard and all this data that we're pumping through, it basically saved over 15 truck rolls of this person trying to go out there or maybe working a third shift to actually see what was happening in a chiller at that given time. And so it turned out to be a real helpful tool for them, and it saved JCI quite a bit of time. Again, the amount of time, if we're not rolling a truck, that's money saved in our pocket at that point. So Alex will kind of take you through the technology itself.
So I'm going to do quite a bit of
Live
demoing here, so I'm going to try to stay out of your way by sitting down. But yeah, so this was a dashboard we put together. It's HTML5, all custom written code. So we've got a portfolio on the left, and we've got an at-a-glance view of the health status. You can see we've got on our connected services side, these are pretty common ballparks you should probably all recognize. So we've got Chicago Cubs, the very well-known Grand Rapids Whitecaps, right? Yeah. Double A team. We've got the Brewers, and they've got an east and west chiller. So we can actually zoom in at a location. We're viewing the Cubs area right now. And if I open up their portfolio, I can see that, yep, we've got 5 chillers online. One of them's got a red status. And up top, we've got chiller stock, we're ready to start. And we've got another status code. If I click on a different area.
So what we did on the left-hand side is every chiller is spitting out what's called an onboard diagnostic. And there's actually 9 different colors that it can spit out. So as the technician signs into the application, they can quickly through that left-hand nav. If it's green, don't worry about it. If it's yellow, probably not great. If it's red, that's the one I should probably click on. This is a demo account that we set up. So we do a live demo. This is a demo account we set up. Yeah, we have Cubs Stadium, Brewers, and the Whitecaps.
Okay, so on the red link, we've got a unit stop, safety shutdown. We wait for it to load. We're going to get some data back. The same way on the graphs that we saw there. So we've got custom selection for time span. You can either select from 5-day or 12 hours all the way up to 2-week preset, or you can actually use the time slider to select your individual feature. This has been pretty useful for people doing data exploration like at a glance. It's also able to be resized for the phone. So as we shrink our screen down, it's going to resize to best fit the screen. And we were able to get this functionality through the custom coding that we did. And the reason we did this is people in the field need to be able to see this on their phone. And so if they're looking at this on a phone screen, you've got a very, very vertical screen. We want to have the navigation on the top, probably our visuals on the in the middle here, and then our actual graphs below that.
Are most people doing responsive design with their app dev now, or is that a new feature? Most people doing responsive or not? Some people? Okay.
So as we walk across, we've got an overview tab. This is very common across all chillers. Stuff that at a glance a chiller technician would know. Details, we're able to go in and select individual points. This is if you're doing a kind of a deep dive analysis. We also got a compare and a fault analysis area. So if there's an actual fault occurring, doesn't look like we have any faults through our event engine, those would show up here.
Yeah, and then on the widgets themselves, they just want to be an application without export to Excel. So all the widgets have a chart to grid function and then an export to Excel. What charting engine did we use?
Yeah, it's Kendo UI.
Okay. So we use couple different charting engines that we have out there. So this was our very first application. This is about a year old when we originally launched it. Okay? So the next application that we designed for all the data flowing through is we have what we call a remote operations center that's turned on 24/7, 365. And so on top of the technicians being able to monitor what's happening for,
I guess, as you mentioned ClickView and a bunch of custom development, did you consciously decide sort of not to build that on ClickView, or are there issues, or have you looked at doing it? I'm just curious why custom development versus
licensing. Mainly a licensing question. And there are we kind of go back and forth. What can we enroll that allows us to do some things, and what's maybe a better fit? And so we're using ClickView. I don't want to call it big data. I think that's too generic of a term. But we have 100 million rows in our ClickView.
Yes.
So we use our ClickView more for our smaller sets of analysts. So, and for a bigger data set. So you notice there that we're only returning back the last 2 weeks was the largest data set. So the technicians look at more of the real-time data and the more of what's happening now. We use ClickView for our analyst view. Does that answer that? Any other questions? Oh, we got to pause here. No? Okay.
I have a question.
Oh, sure.
So it seems like you guys were using SQL Server
Yes.
for your backend
Yes.
database. How come no Hadoop or anything like that?
I'll get to that in a second. So we use Hortonworks. I don't know if anybody in here from Hortonworks. So where we think it's a good fit from a Hadoop perspective is, remember that trend I talked about in the health reporting? We think it's a great fit for that. And some of the unstructured data we're trying to bring in to align some of the structured data and the dimensional data with some of the unstructured data is a good fit for us. And so for where we want to serve this data up real fast, we feel that SQL Server is a good opportunity for us. So we've been working with HBase and some other things about how do we leverage HBase and Hadoop to do some of the health reporting stuff, and then how do we serve up to the phone and to this application from a SQL Server perspective. Does that make sense? I'm not saying we've cracked the code on that, but this is an example of, I mentioned the ROC, or the Remote Operations Center. So this is an operation that runs 24/7, 365. The example I gave earlier is we have people basically monitoring. So we're using, I don't know, Steel X, I think it's called Signal R.
Yep.
But every time an event is popping up on the screen across our buildings or rooms, it pops up here onto the screen. And someone can actually click and drag that into their queue and then take ownership of that. So the story, or one of the things that happened is, all of a sudden something popped up on the screen and said there's a fault on an AC unit at one of the buildings that we maintain. So we call up the person, yeah, hey, what happened? We noticed you had a fault. Well, what they had done is they were cold, and instead of turning the thermostat down, which is logical, they went to the fuse box and just popped it. That's not what you want to do, right? So that's not how you control your equipment or control your temperature at that point. So we're using this technology basically to service up those faults, actually bring back some of the trend data on that through this large database that we had, and also take kind of through the technology.
So we've got events rolling in through our event engine, and those are near real time. We want to be able to show a user what's a high, low, or medium priority event. And easy way to do that was by color. We can see how long the actual event's been open. This is days with the D there. And actual location of that. Now, this call center application, people might be spread out across regions. You could have multiple people monitoring events as they come in, but they might be in the same location. And that was kind of an interesting technical question that we had. So to get the right solution, we used WebSockets. So we get real-time updates from the server whenever an event occurs, both when an event is created, but also when an event is actually claimed. So I can actually throw this into my queue, and you see that event claimed window. Anybody who's actually logged into this dashboard is also going to get that event claimed with my login name next to it. The collaboration behind the actual call center eventing was a pretty important piece of this. So when we actually walk into an event, the event rules engine is going to say, I created this event, here's the issue. We've got a rule around it saying maybe this chiller temperature was running too high. We want to be able to populate that, show where it occurred through the equipment, and then show how important it is both through color, but also how long it's been open. So we've got a problem code associated with this, and we can actually dig into what that problem code might be and resolve it, or we can actually suppress it if we think that, I just want to see what's going to happen if I wait another 8 hours. Technical piece of this, we mentioned the Signal R with the WebSockets. That was a great piece to implement here. We also use Angular. Angular gives us some data binding on the user's front end, so you don't have to keep using jQuery to keep pulling for updates on the UI itself.
Any questions on that?
What was the technology you used instead of jQuery?
Angular.
Thanks.
So we originally started off doing the dashboard. We did the call center application, and this probably seems logical now. What we then did is we moved into the native space for iOS. And we originally were doing a lot of things under responsive design, but we felt we weren't getting the right responsiveness or user experience by not doing a native app. And so we deployed this, I think back in September, where we went strictly with a native app from an iOS perspective. The interesting thing, which kind of made me curious, is we talked about that we monitor everything through Google Analytics, and we line that up with our job descriptions of who's using the application, kind of how they're using it. It turns out that our sales reps are using this the most. And so what they want to do is basically go to a customer and say, I can monitor your chiller all the time, no matter where I am, and see what's happening. And so that's been one of the interesting things, is that we thought, again, this would be pretty hot from a technician perspective, but salespeople are using this to sell our services and basically show people that we can do this. So we've actually taken a lot of the functionality from the dashboard and that second application, the call center application, on surfacing this basically up on the phone. And again, we wrote this as a native iOS app. So here you see kind of on the bottom, you have the status codes, which represent, are there any fault codes coming from that piece of equipment. On the trends, we're bringing back, again, just like the dashboard showed, up to 2 weeks of that point data from the individual pieces of equipment. The log report's kind of interesting. Now we're using this where they can record the physical readings. So if I come into a room like this, I actually record the physical readings, and as it's pumping through to our system, it aligns itself so we can show the customer, hey, here's your report. I went to go look at this room or this piece of equipment, and here's what I found physically when I was there, and here's what the system was telling me. So a nice little addition there. And then we do health checks. So this, again, goes back to your Hadoop question. This is not more or less a real time, but if something's trending, if equipment is going to a fail mode or slowly degrading over time, we call this a health check. So a salesperson, a technician, anybody else can now use their phone to quickly do and diagnose their full portfolio. So they may be monitoring over 100 or 200 different buildings at any given time, and now they can basically do that on their phone. So Alex will kind of take you through with the technology.
We used a compiler called Xamarin. Came out of the Mono project. Started quite a few years back, 10 years back now. And because we're on the .NET stack, we've got quite a bit of legacy framework around our services layer, and we wanted to utilize that without having to rewrite a lot of the existing functionality. So with Xamarin, we were able to take that .NET framework and implement a native iOS app using the Xamarin compiler. Their big claim to fame is 70% code reuse across platforms. So we did target the iOS version for this app itself. If we were very experienced with Xamarin, we could get 70% code reuse if we wanted to port over to Android or Windows Phone. They don't support BlackBerry, but I don't think they'll need to anymore. But so the great part about this was we get a kind of a kickstart as far as coding goes. We're very familiar with .NET. We're able to get up and running and get a app out very quickly. And it is actually a native app. It compiles to native code, so we get all the native experience rather than having a web-based plugin. So some cool things about this, we've got the same at-a-glance view. We can see how long a status has been active across our portfolio. Right now we're actually looking at the Chicago Cubs. And if we go into trends, we can actually select a system from our portfolio. So let's go into Chicago. And it's going to download data, and we can get the same sort of graphing that we're getting on our website right in the app itself. This is using Shinobi library, and it kind of already comes bound with the Xamarin app. As we walk across, we've got some log reports, so we can actually create a report, export to PDF, and email.
Go back to trends real quick. This has been one complaint. This has been the downside of doing a mobile app. This has got pinch and zoom, which they're always asking us to do something similar on the desktop app now. I mean, and ClickView has the nice lasso, but this is consistently requested. We'd like to pinch and zoom on our dashboard now. So as we compare the technologies, they like some of the things on the phone actually better than what we've done on the dashboard.
So yeah, we've got the log reports. We can actually export data to a PDF and then health check across your portfolio. We've got no alerts or alarms for the portfolio as is.
Can you go ahead and click on more real quick? And refresh customer data. So we actually cache the customer list for them from a response time perspective. So that's cached in the phone. It refreshes at a certain rate. Then if you want to do a forced refresh, you can. Again, they can use help or call support from this as well. This we think is probably going to be pretty popular as we go through and do more of this. Any questions on the phone app? Nope.
Well, I think I've heard you mention about 13 different vendors of tools that you use.
Mm-hmm.
How did you manage it all?
Let's see. We used, from a technology stack perspective, we're heavy in a .NET, right? We use ClickView, and then we have a SQL backend. And I think we have 2 or 3 charting engines from that perspective. I mean, you can talk to kind of technically how we do it.
Yeah, so we just take advantage of the platform we're on. If it's web, there's always a new library that's coming out. Angular's been pretty hot lately. So as the project gets more and more mature, we put new products out there. We'll take advantage of the solutions available at that moment. With Xamarin, it happened to be a good fit at the time. In 6 months, there might be an even better solution then. As far as managing it goes, code base, we try to stick very primarily on the .NET framework and not stray away from that. So we want to have somebody come in, if they are able to code, be able to code within the framework we've already set up. And if they need to do any work on the actual app, luckily it's already in C#.NET. If they need to do any work on the web, it's the same language, just different libraries.
I think one advantage I've had in working with the team is most of them are versed in multiple technologies. And so Alex does ClickView, but also does a lot of the web development and is familiar with Xamarin. And so I've probably been lucky from a team perspective that they cross multiple technologies. And so we're only about, ClickView we're 2 or 3 deep. On the web we're about 4 or 5 deep. It's not a very big team. I think we're about at 6 or 8 people and stay pretty consistent along that. But a lot of them share from a technology perspective. And I found too, even from a cost for licensing, Shinobi and some of the chart engines are relatively inexpensive. So, was there another question? No? Okay. And then the last piece that we'll talk through, about 5 or 6 minutes left. We have done a lot with ClickView. So we got a lot of the data coming in. Again, someone had a Hadoop question here. From a ClickView perspective, how do we take all these events, all the health check codes, all the onboard diagnostic, all the trend data, and then surface that up to what we call our analysts? Number one, to check if the chillers are running right. The warranty guys want to have some of this data. And then also data mine from a sales opportunity perspective. So we use ClickView. We've been doing ClickView for a couple of years now. I think actually in this space for us, as far as large data sets, it's one of ClickView's sweet spots. And we've liked using it. So I'll also kind of take you through, we have 2 or 3 different applications, and depending on time, we can show the Google Analytics one as well.
This is primarily for somebody doing a deep dive analysis into our data, some data exploration, data discovery. Because of the licensing model, we've really worked out where maybe somebody who's going to casually view their data can log into the web app. Somebody in the field actually has a mobile app, And then somebody that's doing data discovery wants to do some deep dive analyses, they can actually come into QlikView. We've got a couple of different ways of splicing our data. We've got our raw data that's coming in.
Real quick, we actually embed QlikView into our homegrown portal. So if you see this, on the left where it says Chiller Analytics, that first tab, that's part of the web front end. And then we actually embed QlikView into our portal app. So.
Yep, so this is actually the QlikView document spawned within our portal itself. So this is actually just serving up the raw data that we've seen, and it's aggregated from sensors in the field, and it's aggregated versus like a baseline. So we're trying to show outliers for an analyst. So that's what this meter analysis overview tab is scheduled to do. As you can see here, we've got February 2014 versus a baseline. We've got some percent change analysis behind it, so we can see how much the consumption was. They've got a 500% change off their baseline, and then where they're located. So the outlier piece has been pretty important for analysts coming in. At a glance, they want to pick out who's the troublemaker, especially if they've had a huge percent change month to month, and zoom in and see what caused that. The great part about QlikView is we can analyze our whole customer portfolio all at once. A lot of you have used QlikView from talking with you. It's got this associative in-memory engine where it'll flatten the data out versus, by looking at the fact and the associated DIMs. So just through a quick filtering, we can actually see, if I click on my one facility, everything related to it. Go into my details here, we can see my selected chart in a month, what the trend was related to that. And we can see, yep, we got a huge spike there. So that was the big percent change that we saw.
Yeah, we only have a couple more minutes, so.
Same way with the fault analytics, we've got a way to show outliers, who's causing the most events, and then also on a timeline showing this. So this multi-tool platform, depending on who you are and what you're trying to do, has really come a huge benefit for us trying to fit the customer's needs.
Yeah, what's our largest QlikView? How many rows?
100 million.
So we're serving up all the chiller information into one single QlikView and allow them to drill in. And then what we do is we grab plus or minus, is it 6 hours or 4 hours?
Yeah.
Of the time series data. So if an analyst wants to come in here and take a look at it, they can see basically what was happening prior and post that event. And so, yeah, QlikView for us has been a really nice tool to kind of serve up that larger data set. So with that, I only have about 2 minutes, or is Judy? Okay, 2 minutes. So we have a little bit of time for questions if anybody has any. Yeah.
Do you expect,
Oh. Go ahead.
do you expect that you're going to be able to get enough trends in your data so you're going to be able to alert the technician and order parts at the same time, things like that?
Well, and that's one of the Hadoop things, and I was talking to we want to start aligning some of the unstructured data in there as well. And that's where we think Hadoop is going to probably be. So for lead generation or sales opportunities, so we think SQL right now and probably eventually PDW is going to be a good fit for us to serve this data up. We think using Hadoop and a Hadoop cluster to kind of merge in that structure and dimensional data with the unstructured, and then serve it up from there, will probably be a better fit long term for us. We want to try to get the sensor data in the PDW, serve it up fast, and then kind of push it off to the Hadoop cluster. Yeah. Oh. Yes.
Yeah, earlier you guys talked about, trying to really speed through concepts and proofs. I mean, do you have a corporate guideline, or is it just kind of a gut check of, how much time you spend on development of any particular, application or solution? Or do you guys kind of pound that out in the room, or is it really like, if this isn't going in the direction we need it to go in 8 weeks, we kill it and we move on?
Probably shorter than 8 weeks. But we use target process.
We use a 2-week sprint for our agile. So when we kick off a sprint, we've got a set amount of work. We'll designate some tasks around it. And then if we come back at the end of the 2 weeks and we haven't completed the task, we do some analysis on it. So maybe it wasn't a good fit for the person, or more likely, the scope of the work was way more than we predicted when we created the estimate. And that 2-week took a little bit of finding out. I think we started with a 3-week, and we were able to rein that in a little bit as we got some more experience with the target process, our platform that we're doing Agile on. But no, we haven't had any corporate dictation, at least from your end.
No. And we've had a couple big flops too, right? You're at the end of your release, you throw it out there, and like, why'd you do that? That was a big waste of time. So, and we try to keep, we were doing 8-week releases, we cut them down to 6, and like Hugh said, we're going about 2-week sprints. And then we try to get in front of customers as fast as we can to kind of gauge if we're heading in the right direction. I don't know if that answered your question. Yeah, okay. Any other questions in time like we're running out?
Are you doing anything to share this information with like product engineers to make products better?
Oh, yeah.
Or is it all,
Yeah, I mean, again, the main business case was around the technicians and either keeping or increasing market share. So if we can look like we're basically technology or advancing technology, that's a big thing.
Yeah.
But the warranty guys are chomping at the bit at this point. They're like, holy cow. And here's, I was on the phone with them, and they said, we get a pump, someone just comes and says, here, this broke. And they're like, well, I mean, what am I supposed to do with that? I mean, so now they can basically trace that back and look for the time series data when that pump actually failed. And so as we get more and more of this data, we become more and more popular. So
Do you do any predictive analytics?
We're trying to. There's been some, and again, this is where I'll talk about, we've been trying to take some of our data and move it to the Hadoop cluster, again, for some of those other bigger queries that we'll call them. And so we think that, again, as I've talked to Horton, kind of what we're doing from a structured perspective, aligning that with Hadoop from an unstructured perspective, we think it's a great transition for us. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate you taking the time.